In second generation form, Audi's S5 has become a far more credible contender in the premium badged performance segment, as before, offered in coupe, cabriolet and sportback body styles. Either way, buyers get a significantly more sophisticated package this time round, one featuring improved Quattro four-wheel drive, a quick-shifting 8-speed sports automatic, and a potent turbocharged 354 PS 3-litre V6 beneath the bonnet. It's still perhaps not the most engaging car of this kind you can buy, but what's been delivered here is a very complete proposition indeed.
The original Audi S5 was a potent performance model that was fast, subtle, but rather too easy to ignore in the face of more dynamic, involving alternatives. This second generation version needed to up its game, and all the signs are that it has. S5 history dates back to Audi's launch of its first generation A5 Coupe and the subsequent need for a serious performance version. Now that was satisfied by the original S5 Coupe, introduced in 2007 and initially powered by the English brand's charismatic but thirsty 344 PS 4.2 litre V8. Now that engine was replaced by a less memorable but more efficient 333 PS supercharged 3 litre V6 in 2013. By which time the S5 formula could also be replicated with cabriolet and 5-door sportback body styles. All these S5 variants were desirable without being really definitive, an issue that the launch of the second generation A5 model line in late 2016 gave Audi's engineers a chance to address. Now they call what's on offer here an intelligent evolution, but in actual fact this Mark II model has been completely redesigned from the ground up. A completely new turbocharged 3-litre V6 TFSI engine developing 354 PS is bolted to a lighter, stiffer MLB chassis, as is a new 8-speed Tiptronic setup that works with the latest and more driver-orientated version of Audi's Quattro four-wheel drive system. All four elements have apparently been tuned to create the kind of really driver-orientated feel that was previously missing. Plus, it's all been matched to state-of-the-art cabin quality, class-leading media connectivity, and the possibility of using over 30 separate driving assistance systems. The result for S5 buyers is a powerful package that, as before, is offered in both sportback and cabriolet body styles, as well as in this coupe guise, and is aimed most directly at premium rivals like BMW's 440i and the Mercedes-AMG C43. The kind of car, in other words, for people who want to go very quickly, but who can't stretch to, or perhaps who don't either want or need the race-tuned performance of an AM4, a C63, or indeed Audi's own 450 PS RS5. A considered choice then, and potentially a very clever one. So let's put this Audi to the test. So, what's it like? Well, if you happen to be familiar with the previous generation S5 model, you'll feel that this car feels brisker right from the moment you power away. Now that might slightly surprise those who've noted the switch from supercharging to turbocharging for the 3-litre V6 TFSI engine this time around. After all, the whole reason Audi didn't offer a turbo in the original version of this car was to deal with the kind of initial lag that engines of this kind used to deliver. Things have moved on though with turbo technology. Take the configuration of the 354 PS V6 unit used here, which mounts its single twin-scrolled turbocharger right in the V of the engine to improve response times, hence the instant reaction of this second generation S5 model to your right foot. You're not hurled back against these S Super Sport seats in the way that you would be in Audi's more potent 450 PS RS5 model. Instead, the revs rise, the engine note becomes more urgent, and the horizon scrolls towards you as if it's on fast forward as you power ahead. For sure, it is very fast, but it's anything but frantic, which is why, whereas the RS5 is a bona fide junior sports car, an S5 is merely a very, very rapid A5. But that's okay. A very, very rapid A5 is exactly what most potential S5 buyers will be signing up for. This time around, power has risen by 21 PS and torque has increased by 60 Newton meters, the total now 500 Newton meters. Now that final figure is important because it's a level of pulling power that was too great for the previous S5's 7-speed dual-clutch S-tronic auto gearbox to cope with, hence the installation this time around of a more conventional 8-speed Tiptronic self-shifter. The Quattro four-wheel drive system that all seriously sporting Audis have is also quite a bit more sophisticated this time around too, quicker reacting and more rearward biased in an effort to get this Audi dynamically closer to the potent rear-driven BMW 440i M Sport model that the magazines keep insisting represents this car's nemesis. Now, we don't agree. In our climate, you really need four-wheel drive in cars as powerful as the ones in this segment are, and the only other comparably powerful rival that has it is the similarly priced Mercedes-AMG C43. Now that would be our S5 benchmark, and it was clearly Audi's too, because the performance figures that are delivered by those two models are almost identical. To be specific, rest to 62 in this coupe variant occupies 4.7 seconds, and that's the same as you'd record in the Sportback variant, while the cabriolet version manages 5.1 seconds. Whatever your choice of body style, there's a maximum speed that Ingolstadt still insist on rather pointlessly capping at 155 mph. In acceleration terms, that makes this model about a half a second quicker than its supercharged predecessor, identically as quick as a rival Mercedes-AMG C43, and nearly half a second quicker than a rival BMW 440i M Sport. It might also be worth pointing out that this kind of pace makes this Audi just as fast as the old generation RS5, and that car had a 438 PS 4.2 litre V8 beneath the bonnet. In fact, we reckon this S5 is probably a little faster than that car because its pulling power is available over a wider rev range and it's accessible from as little as 1370 RPM. Handling represents another area that's well up to RS standards, or at least it will be if you pay extra for the sport differential, which at speed through tight corners can constantly vary the amount of torque that's distributed to each of the rear wheels. So rather than subtly braking an individual wheel to transfer traction to one with more grip in the way that a torque vectoring system would, the sport differential instead sends additional wheel speed to each rear wheel in a way that pushes you around the corner. Now the effect is a smoother, quicker and less obtrusive way of exiting a bend. Even without that option fitted, it's likely that you're going to be pretty impressed with the way this S5 tackles the turns. Part of that is down to the redeveloped Quattro system, which usually directs 60% of torque to the back wheels, but if conditions demand it, it can send up to 85% of power to the back, or if necessary, as much as 70% to the front. The setup's been designed to work with a torque vectoring system that applies minimal brake interventions to the wheels on the inside of any given curve before they start to spin, and this maximizes traction and makes handling more precise, agile and stable. The whole package isn't what you'd want if you were tyre smoking on an airfield, but it's absolutely what you'll need in the far more likely scenario of wanting an astonishingly rapid point-to-point performance car for super quick progress on secondary roads in poor conditions. Our only reservation really is an issue that Audi's engineers have traditionally struggled with, that of steering feedback, and that's an issue that affects this car as much as it does the S4 Saloon and Avant Estate models that share virtually all of this S5's mechanical specification. The only real difference with an S5 lies with slightly different front and rear track widths, and that's not enough to change the feeling that you get in this car when you're pressing on through tight corners at speed. It's at this point that you simply don't feel as connected to what's going on beneath you as you would at the helm of, say, a rival BMW 440i. Now this makes quite a lot of difference to the sheer engagement factor that you'd maybe hope for from a high-performance model of this sort. Without that extra nth of steering response, you're never really invited to push that little bit further. Or, as one writer put it, this S5 doesn't question your willpower every time you get behind the wheel. Disappointingly, specifying the extra cost dynamic steering option doesn't really help in this regard either, varying the rate at which the front wheels turn to suit different circumstances without necessarily telling you very much about what it's doing while it's doing it. Now, your Audi Centre salesperson will point out that one of the functions of the standard Drive Select driving dynamic system is to vary steering weight, but steering weight and steering feel are very different things. Now, Porsche knows this, and as the brand gets more involved in the development of future Audi S models, they already co-designed the engine in this one. You'd hope that things would change in that regard. Now, I mentioned Drive Select. Well, it's the same setup you get in an ordinary A5 with a selectable comfort, dynamic, individual, auto and efficiency drive modes, as well as dealing with the steering, also tweak throttle response, stability control thresholds, and if it's fitted, the impact of the sport differential system. Plus, of course, the Drive Select settings alter the response of that 8-speed Tiptronic auto transmission I mentioned at the very beginning. As ever on an S5, there's no manual gearbox option. This is a supposedly old tech torque converter self-shifting setup, but it doesn't feel old tech to use, being in our experience are one of the fastest reacting automatics out there. The computer software throws in a lovely exhaust cackle on full throttle upshifts, while downshifts, well, they're aggressive when you're in dynamic mode, but they're seamlessly smooth otherwise. The other thing that the Drive Select modes can influence is ride quality, but only, rather annoyingly, if you spend extra on the CDC continuous damper control system. Now, a really well-tuned suspension system doesn't necessarily need adaptive damping, and at first glance you would think that the Audi's setup ought to fall into that category. I mean, it's a sophisticated 5-link arrangement on the front and rear axles that precisely separates longitudinal and transverse forces. In the case of this S5 though, this package has been hobbled by the non-negotiable fitment of Load S Sport suspension. Now, this drops the car by 23mm and robs it of a crucial degree of wheel travel, especially the front. That means that a standard S5 will crash through potholes and over speed humps that even a performance-orientated family model ought to take in its stride. Things are slightly better with the CDC adaptive damping fitting and the Drive Select mode set to comfort, but it's a bit irritating to have to keep doing that when ideally you just want to leave the car in the dynamic mode that gives you a few more of the engine's aural fireworks. So where does all that leave us? With the ultimate premium branded performance model available in this segment of the market? Probably not, but we can still totally understand why target buyers might like this car very much indeed. I mean, if you've tried and enjoyed a previous generation S5, then this one will probably be exactly what you're looking for. And if you haven't, well, it might well be exactly what you need. As ever, Audi's been extremely subtle in the aesthetic changes that differentiate this S5 from any ordinary A5 model. Certainly, if it weren't for the S5 badgework, you'd have to be something of an Audi product expert to tell this car apart from an ordinary S-line trimmed version of that standard A5. To be fair, key rivals show almost equal aesthetic restraint and, as this car tries to do, attempt instead to emphasise sporting elegance, poise and precision. As ever, there's the option of either 5-door sportback hatch or cabriolet S5 body styles as an alternative to this coupe, and all three variants seize the opportunity offered by this model's sophisticated MRB Evo platform to offer buyers a slightly larger car than before. Let's get up close and personal here at the front, where the bonnet wraps around the upper edges of the wings. It features 4 pronounced contours and it flows down into the brand's trademark 3-dimensional single frame grille. Here, dual aluminium crossbars are finished in grey matte with chromed inlays. Now, flanking that radiator are sculpted LED headlights. And these lamps that can be optionally ordered, as in this case with Audi's intelligent matrix LED technology. And that's recognisable by its bright white crystal shine. Now here, each headlamp unit divides its high beam into 15 individual light emitting diodes, and those are activated or dimmed in 64 stages depending on traffic and road condition information gathered by an integrated camera. Further down, these corner air inlets are edged by these aluminium vertical bars, from the lower part of which a matte silver trimming strip flows across the entire width of the vehicle. Let's move round to the side. Now, Audi wants you to notice DNA from its classic 80s Quattro Coupe here. And sure enough, there are certainly elements of that in these pronounced bulges above the wheel arches. Although that original rally-inspired model was a boxy, chunky thing. This S5, in contrast, has a more curvaceous look, with a roof height that's lower than that of any other rival in the class, and a sleek 0.25 CD drag factor. Now, to help here, the A-pillars have been set further back, and they no longer act as mounting points for the front door mirrors. Those have been moved onto the doors, and that's just above this three-dimensional piece of chrome trim. This pronounced upwardly slanting lower crease gives the flank sim shape, separating wheel arches housing large 19-inch rims. Now, these feature S5 branded black brake calipers, and that's one of the small differentiators that separate the profile aesthetics of this car from those of any ordinary S-Line branded A5. Other unique touches include these aluminium effect door mirror housings, the chrome trim on the door handles, and lower down, the textured black sill trim tops. Move to the rear and you'll find a lower diffuser that's far more prominent than it would be on any standard stock A5, finished in matte grey and punctuated by twin oval chromed tailpipes on either side. Another unique S5 touch is the subtle black honeycomb grille trimming strip that's built into this contoured rear bumper. Otherwise, the finishing may well be familiar, with this subtle boot spoiler sitting just above LED tail lights that feature scrolling indicators, and a multifaceted 3D design that uses no fewer than 48 LEDs to create a really distinctive nighttime signature. Time to open this long, wide driver's door. Take a seat inside, where you'll find yourself in a cabin we think will really sell you this car. Now, Audi's copied the belt buckler system that's offered by rival Mercedes and BMW models that graciously hands you your belt buckle as you take your seat. But in every other regard, the competition's playing catch up here. There's surprising headroom, there's a wraparound design, and a really premium feeling of space and safety. Now, you need some guidance in the elements that set this S5 model apart, because they're not all that easy to spot at first glance. The three-spoke sports steering wheel is bespoke. We've got the optional R8 style flat bottom one here, and another unique touch lies with these brilliant S Supersport Napa leather trimmed seats that feature this lovely quilted finish and pronounced side bolsters. Otherwise, apart from lovely Alcantara trimming on the doors and a few elements of S branding, the ambiance is exactly the same as it would be in any plushly specified A5 model. So an almost unbroken line of air vents stretch from one side of the fascia to the other, and they sit above a 3D trim inlay panel that can be finished in brushed aluminium, as it is here, or in piano black or carbon fibre. To your left, the centre console area has been visually separated away to give the upper area of the dash more of a floating feel, and small details add to the feeling of quality, like the black leather trimmed gear lever that also acts as a handrest for the infotainment system controller, the touch switches for the 3-zone climate control, and the way that the temperature displays have been incorporated into the ventilation system's rotary dials. In fact, everywhere you look, touch or feel, there are treats. The buttons click nicely, the column stalks feel good, and the low-rent plastics that you'd find further down in most premium rivals are noticeable by their absence. Only storage space could be better. The glove box is small and not lockable as standard, while the door bins are slim, and the console box between the front seats is rather shallow. As I mentioned earlier, though, we like the seats anatomically shaped and perfectly positioned in front of a wheel through which, in a standard S5, you'd view two conventional analog dials separated by a 7-inch coloured driver's information screen. Here, though, as you can see, we've got something much nicer than that. The optional virtual cockpit replaces the entire instrument binnacle with a 12.3-inch LCD colour monitor, and that has a layout that's fully digital and customisable with smart 3D graphics and highly detailed effects. It can be viewed in 3 ways. The classic display shows usual speedometer, rev counter and gear indicator readouts, Alternatively, the progressive display reduces the size of those items and brings functions like the navigation map or your media settings to the fore. S5 buyers also get a third sport display that prioritises the rev counter, and you can access lap timing data should you feel the need to take this car on a track day. We're going to see many more virtual instrument systems of this kind of future years, but this one really sets a standard they all have to try to reach when it comes to clarity and ease of use. We think you've really got to have it with this car. Anything this setup can't tell you will almost certainly be covered by the slimline MMI infotainment display that dominates the top of the dashboard. It's 8.3 inches in size on this model because Audi's top MMI Navigation Plus with MMI Touch system is a standard part of this S5 specification with its crisp 3D maps and responsive NVIDIA graphics. Now, a little disappointingly, it doesn't rise out of the fascia in the way the screen does on a cheaper Audi S3, but in compensation, the thin tablet-like display is now touch sensitive and claims neat pinch and swipe functionality, and it comes presented in a classy silver-coloured magnesium frame. If you don't want to cover the thing with sticky fingerprints, there's voice activation, steering wheel buttons, and of course the usual chrome-edged rotary controller in front of the gear stick, which with this premium MMI package comes with a surface on which commands can be traced by your fingertips. The useful Audi smartphone interface is of course incorporated with Apple CarPlay and Android Auto smartphone connectivity, allowing everything you access on your handset to be duplicated onto this dashboard screen. And the impressive Audi Connect system is also included, via which you'll be able to access a whole raft of 4G online Wi-Fi options powered by a superfast LTE module that give you download speeds of up to 100 megabits per second. Let's take a seat in the rear. As with most coupes, the door here is very long, so when you're opening it wide enough to access the back seat, it's really easy to inadvertently bash it against some sort of solid object. Now, getting into the back is as potentially awkward as it would be in a rival Mercedes-AMG C43 or BMW 440i Coupe model, and it isn't helped by the fact that the front seat base doesn't automatically slide frontwards as you pull the backrest forward in the way that it does in that rival Mercedes. You can use these seat shoulder buttons to manually deliver that functionality though. Once inside though, the news is better, this being the part of the car where you most appreciate this second generation design's 13mm of extra wheelbase. That's freed up an extra 23mm of knee room back here. That's further aided by these scalloped cutouts on the front seat backs. It isn't enough to make things feel in any way spacious back here, but of course if you wanted decent rear passenger space, you wouldn't be looking at this coupe variant in the first place. Instead, you'd be considering the 5-door S5 Sportback model. Buyers in search of a 2-door design tend to transport adults in the back very infrequently, but when the need does arise, this S5 Coupe can improve a little on the claustrophobic quarters provided by some of its closest rivals. These recessed side panels give you decent room for your elbows, and this second generation model provides a few added millimetres for your head too, though that's not enough to prevent 6-footers from having to slouch a little bit. Nice touches include individual cup holders by the seat bases, digital climate control buttons and the centre armrest. Small side bins also offer somewhere to keep small items from rattling around. Finally, let's take a look in the boot. It's gained 10 litres in size with this second generation model's longer design, and it's now the largest in the segment at 465 litres. So that's 20 litres more than you get in a BMW 440i Coupe and 65 litres more than you get in a Mercedes C43 Coupe. You get an underfloor compartment, although that's been taken up with the space-saver spare wheel that laudably Audi supplies as standard. This right-hand side netted compartment is good to have too, and the optional storage pack gives you a floor net, which when it's attached to those 4 chromed tie-down points will stop smaller items from flying around. Uniquely in this class, Audi offers a 40-20-40 split fold arrangement for the rear seatback as a standard feature on S5 models, which means you can push through long items like skis without disturbing your rear-seated occupants. Now, we like the fact that the retracting seatbacks are lockable too. Use these overhead latches to completely push forward both outer sides of the rear backrest, and you'll free up a nearly flat area that gives this car a surprising amount of practicality. Now you also get this flexibility with the S5 Cabriolet, and you'll probably need it there because with that body style the boot is just 380 litres in size. The S5 Sportback in contrast offers a 480 litre boot, and that's extendable to 1300 litres if you push forward the rear seat back. You'll need a £47,000 budget for this S5 Coupe, with the same amount required for the 5-door Sportback version of this car. Now, if you're more tempted by the S5 Cabriolet variant, the sum required will be more like £52,000. All these models come in a single mechanical configuration that sees the same 354 PS 3-litre V6 turbo petrol engine, mated to Quattro 4-wheel drive and an 8-speed Tiptronic automatic gearbox. A few comments might be helpful on where this S5 fits into the Ingolstadt brand's lineup. The most potent version of a standard A5 is the 252 PS 2-litre TFSI Quattro S-Line variant, and graduating up to this more potent and more desirable S5 derivative from that model will cost you a premium of around £5,000, which seems fair enough. Bear in mind though that the S5's engineering is shared identically by Audi's subtly styled S4 Saloon and Avant Estate models that will cost you slightly less, the saving being just over £2,000 in the case of the S4 Saloon. You probably also need to know that there is a more potent version of this car available, although the variant in question will cost you a lot more. We're talking about Audi's desirable RS5 Coupe, which uses a 450 PS 2.9-litre TFSI engine and costs around £63,000. On to the S5 value proposition in comparison to rival brands. Now we'd say that coupe and cabriolet versions of the Mercedes AMG C43 4MATIC are the most direct rivals to this car, as they're the only precisely matched competitors that also offer four-wheel drive. The Merc is just as fast as this Audi, it's fractionally more powerful, it's a bit more expensive, but perhaps most significantly, it will cost you about 10% more to run. Otherwise, you're looking at rear-wheel drive alternatives, probably something like coupe, convertible or 5-door Grand Coupe versions of BMW's 440i M Sport. And that's a model that's fractionally cheaper and a car that all the magazines will tell you is a better driver's choice. Well, we wouldn't argue with that, but we would point out that the BMW is around 30 PS down on this Audi, so it takes nearly half a second longer to reach 62 miles an hour from rest, at least in the dry anyway. In the wet, quite frankly, a 440i driver wouldn't see which way this S5 went. Are there other alternatives? Well, for around £3,500 less than S5 money, the Infiniti Q60 S Sport 3-litre T all-wheel drive coupe offers 405 PS, but less pulling power. Otherwise, there really isn't much that's directly comparable, and nothing else similar that offers the reassurance of four-wheel drive. A Mercedes E400 coupe offers a similar standard of power, but that's really more of a grand tourer than a serious performance car. Coupe and convertible versions of the Ford Mustang V8 also offer equivalent levels of speed, and they'll save you around £7,000, but they don't have a classy enough feel to interest many likely S5 buyers. Better in that regard is the much pricier Lexus RCF coupe, but that's really more of an RS5 rival. If, having considered all of that, you conclude that it is an S5 that you really want, then you're going to need to know just how generous Audi has been with the standard spec. So let's take a look at that. Now, we've already talked about the standard auto gearbox and the Quattro setup. Other mechanical fundamentals to the S5 package include firm, lowered S Sport suspension and an S model enhanced braking system with branded brake calipers. You also get 19-inch 5-spoke Carvo alloy wheels with a contrasting grey polished finish, along with full LED headlights with washers, high beam assist and LED tail lights. Plus, of course, there are lots of subtle S model styling tweaks. The radiator grille, the side inlets, the rear diffuser, the rear spoiler, even the tailpipe and the mirror housing. All of that is S5 specific. As of course is much of the interior trim. The embossed front S Supersport seats, for example, which can be specified in either black, grey or red. They're electrically powered, they're heated and they're finished with fine Napa leather. Plus they feature a pneumatic massage function. To complete the classy feel, there's leatherette trimming extended onto the lower centre console, the door armrest and the door pulls. The gear lever, that's bespoke, as is the 3-spoke leather sport steering wheel, through which you view a set of S instrument dials that are separated by a 7-inch colour driver's information system display. Also standard is top-level media connectivity, and that's courtesy of Audi's MMI Navigation Plus setup, which works via an 8.3-inch centre dash screen and which includes 3 years of access to the suite of Audi Connect infotainment services. Audi Connect is something I really need to tell you a bit more about. It gives you an LTE data transmission module that establishes high-speed 4G Internet 3 access and which creates in this S5 a Wi-Fi hotspot. It also allows you to navigate with images from Google Earth, access a Google Points of Interest search function with voice control, and use a web radio setup with stations from all around the world. Through the Connect system, you can access special in-car versions of your Facebook and Twitter pages, and it's also possible to read, write and send text messages and emails. The included online media streaming package, well, that will give you access to millions of music tracks, and there's also a clever Audi online traffic information system, and that uses live traffic information to reroute you around jams. Plus the setup can also deliver parking information and display details on parking lots and parking garages almost anywhere you're likely to go. Otherwise, it's all very much as you would get in any normal high-spec Audi A5 model, which means that, as with all A5s, you get the brand's Drive Select vehicle dynamic system that allows you to tweak the throttle, the steering and the gear shift timings to suit the way that you want to drive. Other key features include auto headlamps and wipers, rear parking sensors, an alarm and LED rear lights with dynamic scrolling indicators. Plus, on the S5 Cabriolet, there's obviously a power-operated fabric roof. As for the usual A5 series interior features, well, in case you're not familiar with those, you can tick off things like 3-zone climate control, a keyless go push-button starter, cruise control with a speed limiter and an auto-dimming rear-view mirror. Now, as you expect from this class of car, the infotainment package integrates Bluetooth phone connectivity, access to the Apple CarPlay and Android Auto systems, and a 10-speaker, 180-watt DAB Audi sound system. And all of that is controllable either via the MMI controller, by voice, through buttons on the multifunction leather-stitched steering wheel, or via that centre dash colour touchscreen. Enough on the standard S5 specification, time to discuss what you can do to embellish it, as almost all owners will undoubtedly want to do. In fact, we'd go as far as saying that to preserve prime used values, there are a few key features that you probably really need to have. In a few years' time, buyers on the second-hand market are quite possibly going to favour models that are fitted with optional features like the adaptive S Sport suspension with damping control setup that most customers tend to want. Plus, ideally, your S5 should be fitted with the optional Quattro with Sport differential package, and that distributes variable amounts of driving force to each rear wheel, and it's improved stability and agility when you're taking tight corners at speed. Future buyers would probably also quite like to find 3 further items that have been fitted to our test car here. A high-end 19-speaker, 755-watt Bang & Olufsen 3D sound system, the Audi virtual cockpit instrument display, and cutting-edge matrix LED headlamps. Those matrix lights are a real nighttime talking point, incorporating sensors and an inbuilt camera that detects other road users as well as ambient light in built-up areas. The beams then react by dipping individual LEDs to prevent dazzle while still fully illuminating the remainder of the road. And they even draw from the vehicle's navigation data to anticipate corners, adjusting LEDs as you negotiate the bend. Now, both the virtual cockpit and the matrix lights can be ordered separately or as part of a light and vision pack that also throws in extended coloured LED interior lighting. Alternatively, there's a vision pack which bundles the virtual cockpit feature up with a head-up display. On to less significant extra stuff that you could look at. There's a dynamic steering option that varies the steering ratio based on your speed and the drive select mode you've chosen, but in our experience it doesn't really succeed in offering the kind of feel and feedback that you really want. If we were towing regularly, as some S5 Sportback owners may be, then we'd want the detachable tow bar, which comes with a trailer stabilisation control. What else? Well, we'd be tempted by the parking assistance pack with its 360-degree camera system and parking assist setup that searches for spaces and then steers you into them. Other key options include the Audi phone box system that wirelessly charges your smartphone and improves its reception quality via the roof antenna. If you want to keep ticking boxes, then you could add in the advanced key keyless entry system, a rear view camera, privacy glass with front acoustic glazing, power folding mirrors, a heated steering wheel, an extended LED interior multicoloured lighting pack, heated seats in the rear, roll-up blinds for the rear side windows and a heated windscreen. In terms of the aesthetics of your S5, well, if budget allows, you can really go to town. Surprisingly, there are no alternative wheel options, but you can get the standard 19-inch rims fitted out with evocative red brake calipers peeping out through the spokes. Your Audi Centre will talk you through the various optional metallic, pearl effect and Audi exclusive paint colours. Moving inside, you can specify interior inlays in a race-style carbon atlas finish if you want an alternative to the standard matte brushed aluminium items. And we would be tempted to add in this test car's optional R8 style flat-bottomed steering wheel. On to practical touches. The storage pack gives you nets in the front seat backrests, an extra storage compartment below the light switch on the driver's side, a lockable glove box, a cup holder in the rear armrest, and luggage in it, a bag hook and a 12-volt socket in the boot. There's also an optional hands-free tailgate opening system for the Sportback model. You simply wave your foot beneath the bumper if you're approaching the car laden down with bags. And as you would expect, there's also the option of the usual roof bars for luggage boxes, skis, snowboards and bikes. On to safety. Now, like all A5 models, this one gets a collision avoidance system that Audi calls Presense City. This is one of those setups that constantly scans the road ahead in search of potential accident hazards. If it detects one, you'll be warned. If you don't respond, or perhaps you aren't able to, the system will automatically brake the car and it should be able to avoid a collision at speeds of under 19 miles an hour. If you are going faster than that, then the Presense City system will reduce your speed to soften the impending impact. If you do hit something and you panic, then a standard multi-collision brake assist system will automatically take over the braking duties to avoid the possibility of skidding and further collisions. As for more common standard safety features, well, rather meanly, Audi does make you pay extra for a hill hold assist feature that will stop you from drifting backwards on uphill junctions. But otherwise, all the main bases are covered. So you can tick off ISOFIX child seat fastenings, anti-whiplash head restraints, and a tyre pressure loss indicator, plus twin front, side and curtain airbags with rear side bags, an extra cost option. In addition, as expected in this segment, there is a complete roster of electronic acronyms, including the usual assistance for braking, traction and stability control. There's also a rest recommendation feature that will monitor your driving for drowsiness and which will alert you if necessary to stop for a restorative coffee. It's always possible to go further though, and should you want extra peace of mind, your Audi Centre salesperson will doubtless point you towards the choicest elements of the safety technology that's been developed for this car. So let's start with the Parking Assistance Pack Advanced package that includes 5 key features. A cross traffic assist rear feature alerts you to oncoming cars if you're reversing out of a space, and an exit warning system monitors the rear and the side of your S5 as you get out of it, alerting you if vehicles or cyclists are approaching from behind. On the move, Audi Side Assist works as a blind spot monitor, warning you if you're dangerously about to pull out to overtake in the path of another vehicle. Plus, there are Audi Presense Basic and Presense Rear features that, in the event of an inevitable front or rear impact, optimally prepare the car to best survive it. The other, even more significant combined safety feature option you'll be offered on this car is called the Driver Assistance Pack Tour package. Now, this gives you 7 key extra electronic safety items that really could make the difference between a near miss and a really bad day. So let's run through them. Let's start with a system the Ingolstadt brand calls Presense Front. Now, remember that standard pre-sense city setup I was just telling you about, that at low speeds will scan the road ahead for collisions and which can automatically brake to avoid them. Well, wouldn't that be good if that setup operated at higher speeds too? Well, with pre-sense front it does. Even cleverer is what we'd see as probably the most sophisticated driver assistance pack tour feature, and this is something that Audi calls adaptive cruise control with stop and go and traffic jam assist. Now, this system is there to automatically keep your S5 a set distance behind the car in front on the highway, and it will warn you if you're too close to another vehicle, and it's also able to automatically stop you and then start you off again if you come across a tailback. Now, the traffic jam assist bit also frees you up in slow to medium speed queues. It allows the car to automatically brake, accelerate and steer for you at speeds of up to 37 miles an hour. Yes, really. We haven't finished either. An equally clever predictive efficiency assist system works with that setup, regulating your Audi's speed for maximum efficiency and also offering driving tips that could create fuel savings of up to 10%. You think that's neat? Well, then check out the fourth driver assistance pack tour feature. This is called Turn Assist. So let's say you're turning out of a junction and you haven't seen an oncoming car or bike. Turn Assist will automatically apply the brakes and prevent the accident. If only every car had that feature. Other more familiar inclusions in the pack run to traffic sign recognition. Now this can picture road signs and then display them on the dash. Audi Active Lane Assist, which is there to gently steer you back into your lane if you inadvertently drift out of it. And a so-called collision avoidance assistant that tweaks the steering to keep the car stable in an emergency maneuver. It's all very reassuring. A lot's happened in terms of engine efficiency since the old V8 powered S5 models are often used to stray into single-digit fuel consumption during hard use. The supercharged 3-litre V6 that was used in later versions of this car's predecessor was, of course, much better in that regard. But returns which looked quite okay back in 2013, about 29 mpg on the combined cycle and around 225 grams per kilometre of CO2 would be significantly off-putting to likely business buyers now. Hence the effort that's been expended into making sure that this S5 is a much more credible contender in that regard. The lighter MLB Evo chassis helps, of course, as does the fact that 14 kilos has been trimmed from the weight of the Audi's 3-litre V6 TFSI engine, and they're both major contributing factors to what, in the case of this coupe body style, is a 60 kilo weight saving over the previous model. This unit switch from supercharging to turbocharging obviously makes it more efficient, but there's more to it than that. Like the brand's impressive 2-litre TFSI engine, this power plant uses special high-pressure injection valves, a shortened compression phase, and an elevated geometric compression ratio that works with a clever valve lift system, and that's to balance the conflicting needs of power and efficiency. But forget the tech talk, what are the results? Well, quite simply, they're class leading. A rival BMW 440i is a fraction lighter than an S5, and it doesn't have to carry around the weight of a four-wheel drive system. But even so, it'll cost you slightly more to run than this Audi, as will this car's other key competitor, the Mercedes-AMG C43. To be specific, an S5 Coupe on standard 19-inch wheels manages 38.2 mpg on the combined cycle, while for an S5 Sportback the figure is 37.7 mpg. Both body styles return a CO2 reading of 170 grams per kilometre. Now those CO2 figures mean a reasonable benefit in kind rate of 31%. For an S5 Cabriolet you're looking at 36.2 mpg and 177 grams per kilometre. Of course, this Audi's impressive showing isn't solely down to reduced weight and its redesigned engine. Other important factors include a more slippery shape and an engine stop-start system that cuts in as you coast or halt rather than waiting until you get to a complete stop. Now this means that in traffic the engine is off more often than it would otherwise be. It's also worth mentioning that the automatic transmission has an efficient freewheeling mode that cuts in when you come off the accelerator and cruise at speeds between 35 and 100 miles an hour, and this feature disengages the engine for greater efficiency and then re-engages it immediately and almost seamlessly when you either accelerate or brake. Magazine tests have pointed out that across the board, the fuel and CO2 figures I just quoted can be difficult to achieve in real-world motoring, but then that's not an issue exclusive to Audi. Much will depend on the driver, hence the Ingolstadt brand's efforts with this car to help the person at the wheel do more when it comes to issues of efficiency. So as usual with the company's models, there's an efficiency setting on the Drive Select vehicle dynamic system, which tweaks the air conditioning, the gear shift timings and the throttle response for maximum frugality. Going further than that requires use of the optional predictive efficiency assist setup that Audi says could potentially improve your fuel economy by as much as 10%. It works with the navigation data and the adaptive cruise control system that comes as part of the extra cost Driver Assistance Pack Tour package. How? Well, by analysing any given route once set to decide how the journey could be undertaken more efficiently. Now in doing this, the speed limits, the traffic signs, the bends and the roundabouts that you'll be encountering along the way are all taken into account. Now the setup then offers driving tips that will help you achieve better running cost returns. So perhaps, for example, a junction is out of your sight around the next bend and you could take your foot off the accelerator a little earlier. Get onto the motorway and with the adaptive cruise control system activated, Predictive Efficiency Assist will automatically make all the frugal driving adjustments for you. So if it knows you're going to be travelling for a few junctions, it'll engage that freewheeling mode that I just mentioned at cruising speeds for greater efficiency. What else? What about maintenance? Well, service intervals will vary between 9 and 19,000 miles, depending on how hard you drive the car. Somewhere in that span, the need for an impending garage visit will flash up in the instrument binnacle. In fact, this car can even book its own service appointments via an Audi Connect safety and service system app. As well as providing emergency calling and online roadside assistance, this feature can, at the appropriate time, send a service request direct to your local dealer. Alternatively, you can sign up for Audi Service Request, which uses the onboard Wi-Fi to enable your car to communicate with the dealer. So as your S5 nears a time when work will be needed, the diagnostics will alert your nominated local Audi centre, who will then contact you to book in a convenient time. Maintenance costs can be kept down if you go for one of the prepaid servicing plans that you'll be offered at initial purchase. Another neat service your dealer can offer you is the so-called Audi Cam system. Now here, technicians carrying out workshop inspections on your S5 can focus a handheld Audi Cam camera on specific problems and accompany the image with a verbal diagnosis to create footage that can be sent to your computer or to your smartphone. Now that way, you'll know exactly what work you're authorising on your car. Onto the warranty. All contenders in this class get 3 years of cover, but whereas you won't get your mileage limited in this period if you opt for something made by BMW or Mercedes, Audi rather meanly restricts you to 60,000 miles. Optional extra cost warranty packages can extend that cover to either 4 years and 75,000 miles or 5 years and 90,000 miles. And if the worst happens and the car breaks down, there's free roadside assistance included for the first 36 months of ownership. What else? Well, insurance is rated at Group 42E, and as usual with Audi, residual values are predicted to be satisfyingly strong. Experts Cat Monitor reckon that after 3 years and 60,000 miles, your S5 should still be worth around 41% of your original purchase price. That's provided, of course, that you haven't loaded up with too many options. Now, that is a fraction below arrival Mercedes-AMG C43, but it's up to 8% more than you get back from arrival BMW 440i. You could drive this S5 for the whole of its motoring life without suspecting the beast that lies beneath the bodywork. Some owners will, and that's a pity because this Audi split personality can now also promise a remarkably agile driver's car and a devastatingly quick tarmac cross-country tool. As before though, if you want a sporty model of this sort to be some kind of dynamic hooligan, some sort of junior BMW M4, you probably do better looking elsewhere. A typical S5 owner is really above all that sort of thing. He or she doesn't want the thrill-a-minute nervousness of an M4, a C63, or even Audi's own RS5, and isn't looking for a car that will replicate that with slightly less power for slightly less money. So the Ingolstadt brand has delivered to that brief. Now, unless you do something stupid, this car won't introduce you to any sort of fear factor. Instead, it offers speed that you can control confidently and extra traction that's telling in the kind of conditions that so often characterize this country. Would you take it on a track day? Well, almost certainly not. Would you enjoy a high-speed trip through the Alps in one? Absolutely yes. None of this, though, endears the S5 to the tyre-smoking folk who write for the car magazines. If you talk to someone who's about to write a cheque for a car of this kind, though, so many of them will be more inclined to opt for the Audi. No, for sure it isn't perfect. Certainly the steering could do with a little more feel. Still, most people would happily accept that in return for four-wheel drive traction that in this segment only Mercedes C43 can match. And that's a car that costs more to run and which can't match this Audi's beautifully crafted cabin. In summary then, the S5 in this guise seems finally to have found the right balance between speed and sensibility. If we had to own a car for a week from this segment, well, this wouldn't be the one we'd choose. If we had to choose one to live with though, it'd be difficult to resist. Audi's S badge has always delivered a special experience. Now, it's a properly sporting one too.